Well, Ken, you've certainly spent a number of years on these questions. I'm talking with Dr. Kenneth Ring. We're in the Prague Botanical Gardens. Dr. Ring is the author of the Omega Project and is the world's leading expert on the near-death experience. Ken, I know recently you've been interested in UFOs. How did you get from UFOs or from near-death experiences to UFOs? That seems quite a leap.
Well, on one perhaps mistaken day, I picked up a copy of Whitley Strieber's book, Communion, came out some years ago, and though I had no interest in fact, an aversion to UFO studies, I found that some of the effects that he was talking about of those experiences seemed very reminiscent of those that followed NDEs, and so I wanted to explore the connection.
Why do you think that these abduction phenomena never happen to what I would call smart people? In other words, it's always some poor soul who lives in a trailer park who has
No,
this
I don't
happen.
think so. I think that there are people who have these experiences that come from a pretty wide swath of the social register, up and down. What I found in my studies is that actually the people who are prone to these experiences are folks with a troubled background. They often report traumatic childhoods. They report sexual abuse, stressful childhoods. They're people who, even as children, seem to be susceptible not to fantasy, but to alternate realities. Not everybody is equally likely to have this kind of experience. I don't think these folks are pathological or come from some particular social stratum, but they have particular kinds of psychological characteristics that predispose them to have these kinds of experiences.
How do you relate this phenomenon to your own field of expertise, which is the near-death experience?
What I found is if you look at the phenomena themselves, they seem extremely different in terms of their feature surfaces. What you look at the near-death experience, it's a very blissful experience, it's very beautiful, people have very many positive things to say about it. You look at the abduction experience, people are traumatized by it, deeply frightened, disturbed by it. They seem at antipodes, but if you look at the structure of these experiences, the structure is the same. They have the structure of shamanic journeys, of initiations. You're taken from the ordinary world, you're taken to another world, you learn things, you are transformed in that world, and you bring back those transformations with you. What I found was that the same kind of background that's typical for people that report UFO encounters, not limited to, but including abductions, is exactly the same kind of profile that you find for people that have had NDEs, near-death experiences. Same kind of person is prone to them. So I talk about an encounter-prone personality who's susceptible or vulnerable to these kinds of experiences more than the average person. But the key thing that relates these two phenomena, and perhaps others like them, are the transformations that tend to take place in the lives of people afterward. People with both kinds of experiences say afterward they're more appreciative of life, more appreciative of nature, they have a deeper feeling of self-worth, they are more compassionate individuals, so less materialistic. They're more spiritual and not necessarily more religious. In fact, they may be less religious, but they're more spiritual. They're more psychic. They're more intuitive. What seems to be the outcome of these experiences is however different the experiences themselves may be in their content, the effect is the same. You go through an ordeal of either nearly dying or the shock of a UFO encounter, and you're changed by that experience. Like Nietzsche said, that which doesn't kill me makes me stronger. These people are stronger spiritually. They seem to function at higher levels of intuitive understanding, of psychic awareness. It's an expanding experience for both.
Well, it's interesting that the personality profile is the same, but in one case the reaction is positive, the other negative. Do people have near-death experiences without coming near to death?
Sure, there are lots of ways, and I think the near-death experience is misleading because it implies there's something unique that happens at the point of physical death or when people enter clinical death, and that's not true. There are many different pathways that lead to essentially the same experiences without having to throw yourself under the tires of the nearest oncoming truck. Many different ways to get into this kind of experience.
So relate it a little bit to the psychedelic experience.
I'd be happy to. I think I've talked with a lot of people, I'm sure you've talked to many more, who have had high-dose LSD sessions or other kinds of psychedelic sessions, who have told me, in effect, well, I never came close to death, but I know exactly what you mean when you talk about a near-death experience, because I've had the same thing. The out-of-body experience, the feeling of moving into a beautiful, radiant, illuminated space, the sense of being flooded with total universal knowledge, of being transformed in the instant and bringing that transformation back. To me, it's like the light or spiritual reality or whatever this thing may be called is available all the time. There are just different access routes to it. The psychedelic is clearly one aspect, one route that leads to that destination. The near-death experience is another. People a spiritual path and deeply committed to it could have the same kind of revelation, the same kinds of insights. So I think that, it's a question of equifinality, many different pathways leading to the same destination and the same transformative effects. That's what I think is important about those experiences.
Well, now we've had psychedelic experiences and near-death experiences presumably for millennia. Is this abduction thing new? Or are we just getting the old stuff repackaged in a funny way?
Well, I think that it's related to things that have always happened to humankind. Interaction with the invisible world of spirits. Your phrase, I think, was sylphs of the air, the elementals, the fairies. Folklore, I think, is certainly related to this particular phenomenon. However, even among folklorists like Eddie Bullard, for example, who's the one who's looked into this most closely from the standpoint of the UFO abduction phenomenon, there seem to be aspects of this experience that make it unique unto itself, that make it similar to the folkloric experiences of former times, and yet it's in a kind of technological gloss. I think maybe because the alien is kind of the mythic archetype of our time, it's not fashionable to see angels and spirits and demons anymore, but the myth of the extraterrestrial is everywhere you look. And so I think in a way this particular kind of archetype has been clothed in the imagery and the kind of space-age technology and talk and so on that's characteristic of our own time. So I think there's something unique to it and something that relates to, the folkloric experiences of former times too. Because contact between the invisible world and the physical world, that's probably as old as man is old.
But you're, essentially, it sounds as though you're fundamentally a psychologist in that you don't take this at face value.
No. I don't take these as literal experiences of an incursion into physical space-time reality of little beings from other places that have come to do nasty things to people. That, oddly enough, it seems odd to me, seems to be the dominant view of American ufologists. I'm not a ufologist, as you say, I'm a psychologist. In Europe, I think the interpretation is quite different. I don't take these experiences as literal, but I take them as real within an alternate reality, within what Henri Corbin calls an imaginal realm. They're real enough, people, for example, people who have near-death experiences will say things like, this experience was more real to me than you and I sitting here talking about it is real. It's more real than life itself. There is a reality to these experiences, but I think it's a profound mistake to think it's the same thing as space-time ordinary sensory world reality.
So what you're saying is that these are symbolic constructs.
Yes. There's a symbolic aspect to them. And I think the important thing, I think there are two attitudes toward the UFO question. It's a mystery, but there are two types of mysteries. There are mysteries like in detective stories that beg for some kind of solution, and you only feel satisfaction when the solution at the end is revealed and all the reasons given. Then there are mysteries that are meant to be explored. To be savors, yes, true mysteries. And these mysteries beg for exploration, not for explanation, if I can put it that way. And the UFO, seems to me, the UFO phenomenon is the second category of mystery. That's why I personally, and perhaps temperamentally, I'm opposed to the idea of trying to package it as though it were something as simple as other beings, however amazing that would be in itself, other beings coming from other places in the galaxy to invade or to have some contact with human affairs. I think the mystery is likely to be much more profound than that.